In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson, and I'm so excited that you're here with me. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life's lessons to learn and grow from them and to take it to the next level and help others who are struggling through dark times. My special guest has forged an absolutely tremendous journey of incredible highs and lows, as well as smooth and very, very rough seasons. Having battled obesity through his childhood years, he was later diagnosed with an eating disorder, anxiety, and OCD. After conquering obesity, he lost both parents as a teenager, ushering in a myriad of life struggles, including the return of the eating disorder. Not only does he journal his path and share his story on his website blog called Orthorexia Bites, he's raising his voice and spreading the awareness of eating disorders among men. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome for Mr. Jason Wood. Jason, hey, how are you, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. It is wonderful to be here. I am so looking forward to our conversation and just this incredible opportunity to share my journey. Because if I can take the road that I've taken and make it a little bit easier for somebody else, then that is my mission.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man. And we reciprocate in gratitude. We're very, very thankful that you are able to join us here as well. Oh, man. So, Jason, there's a lot to unpack here. Okay. And I am just so excited and I'm really actually bubbling because uh, I want to make this as organized as possible. Okay. So the listeners um, can hear that this is structured and they're not confused or lost in a timeline. But at the same time, I want it to develop organically and naturally through our dialogue. Okay. So we're definitely going to make that happen without a doubt. So to start us off, can you maybe walk us through the earliest point in your life when you or your parents realized something wasn't quite right?
Yeah, so for me, I remember very vividly being in the clothing store and none of the clothes fit me. I just wanted to wear jeans like everybody else my age was doing. But of course, I was a 90s kid, so Velcro was all the fad at that point.
Yeah.
And I couldn't fit into any jeans. So mom took me over to the husky section. And it
Mhm,
was at that very moment that I
mhm.
realized something is different about me. My body is different than everybody else's. And
Okay.
it was at that moment in
Mhm.
which I realized that I kind of had a negative perception of my body. And
Yeah.
it was something that I realized other people could walk into a room and they weren't predefined. I would walk into a room and I was the fat kid, and the bullies at school made that very well known. So I just kind of, I think the seed was planted at that point, just right there in the husky section at the clothing store, letting me know
Gotcha.
that something was up. And that's when I started to become very self-conscious about
Mhm.
what I ate and how I looked.
Gotcha. Man, I see. And kids can be cruel, as we all know and learn in, with our peer pressure and, if we have little ones and see what they go through their formative years. Um, is it also fair to say that that was maybe an introduction in a negative way to labels, the meaning of labels? I mean, like you said, you walked in the room, you were the fat kid, right?
Yeah, at that point, that's when I realized that
Mhm.
you're determined based upon the way you look or the way that you behave, and people lose sight of who you really are. You're just
Yes.
assigned a label, and that's who you are. You have no personality at that point. You're nothing
Mhm.
more than that label. And for me, that was very difficult to understand at such a young age. And it kind of coincided too with being a man and growing up with losing my dad at 11 years old. uh,
Mm.
I didn't feel like I had the label of being a man. So I felt like I was
Mhm.
always trying to prove my masculinity. And
Mhm.
I think that just really also fueled the eating disorder and the self-doubts and the insecurities that I developed at a young age.
Yes, yes, I got you. Wow. Okay, so From what I understand, you've entered Weight Watchers like in your mid-teens, early teens, late teens.
Yeah. So I was 16. It was right
Okay,
after I started to learn how to drive. I was on my way to Weight Watchers. Yep.
gotcha. Now, I think you may have mentioned on your blog, having the overachiever mentality and and having a mindset of really just adhering by rules, whatever the guidelines are, following, not just following the guidelines but shattering the guidelines and being really vigilant about your routine in whatever endeavor you explored, right? So there you did achieve some success initially, right? Through Weight Watchers?
Yeah, I did. I've always
Mhm,
been the type of person that just had to push myself. 100% was never enough. It had to be 110%. And
mhm.
I remember just right away at Weight Watchers when I was in those meetings, and I would hear people just get praised and the claps, and it was just such a feeling that I wanted. So I sat
Mhm,
there and I was like, I want to lose this weight and I want to
mhm.
lose it fast so I can impress people, and
Yes.
maybe it will give me value, maybe it will give me meaning and give me something to feel good about myself. And it was successful. I lost a lot of weight, and the problem was I hid it. I acted like I was following the plan, but the whole time I was taking it to the extremes. With Weight Watchers,
Mm,
at that point, it was all about eating a certain number of points every day. Well,
mhm,
I kind of figured out that if I shaved off a couple points here and there, the pounds would melt away faster.
mm,
I kind of hid behind the excuse that I was just a young guy. So my metabolism was a little bit faster than the majority of the other people at the meetings. But in actuality, at that point, I was already starting to, I guess, learn the concept of restricting. And with my overachiever and perfectionist personality, I
mhm.
just thrived on the counting the points, and it almost became a challenge. It was how far below that number can I go today?
I got you. Yeah, when naturally speaking, when we are called to compete or have a rival, it usually brings out the competitor in us, right? It
Mhm.
it it, it, it we're called to the rise of the challenge, so to speak. And even something that you may be challenging yourself on, whether it's um, I guess in golf they say you're not playing against the player, you're playing against the course. Well, it's kind of like you were playing against the plan, as far as the rules, the regulations, the guidelines that you had to follow. So at this time in Weight Watchers, was this past the time that you were diagnosed with anxiety and OCD?
No, so this was all prior to that.
Okay, okay.
16, and I actually wouldn't be diagnosed for about another 15 years. Um,
Really?
so it went really undetected for a long time. I had no idea that I was even battling an eating disorder. I thought
Mhm.
it was just some sort of maybe unhealthy relationship with food, and I figured everybody has it. If you go out
Right.
for dinner with somebody, they'll say, "Ooh, I'm going to be bad tonight and have dessert," or
Yeah,
"Ooh,
yeah.
I really need to get the salad instead of the steak."
Right,
And
right.
I just assumed, okay, well, that's what I'm doing too. It might just be
Uh-huh.
a little bit more extreme than others. So the
Mhm.
thought of an eating disorder or OCD or anxiety, none of that even crossed my mind for a very long time. I just figured
Wow.
that was the norm. That's how everybody else felt.
I see. So, in retrospect, from 15, 20 years later, when you were diagnosed with that,
Mhm.
um, as you reflected in retrospect, um, did you see signs of that anxiety and OCD in your earlier years?
Absolutely, absolutely. It was, I think a lot of it was, it comes with that perfectionist overachiever. There's
Right,
that anxious feeling that I've
right.
got to be doing more. I'm not enough.
Yes.
And as soon as I received that diagnosis last year and
Hmm.
started to come to terms with everything, I looked back on my past and I realized it had been there the entire time. I've been an anxious person the majority of my life.
Hmm.
It was just never diagnosed. It was never recognized. And it's the same with OCD.
Hmm.
Things had to be a certain way. Everything is very regiment oriented with me. I
Yes.
remember going on vacation with my family, and I would put together an itinerary that was
Hmm.
to the minute, letting everybody know where they had to be and when they had to be there. And those were all things that, I thought I was just a little control freak. I didn't realize that it was a lot deeper than just wanting to organize things.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Wow. To the minute, an itinerary. And you mentioned this was like for a family trip?
Yeah, for just a regular family
Wow.
vacation. So I must have been a lot
Yeah.
of fun to take on a trip.
Oh, I bet you were, Jason, man. I
Uh,
bet you were. So, and I'll be honest with you, I am not very familiar or too familiar with OCD.
mhm.
I guess I don't know. To some degree, I kind of think I am. I'm very routine oriented, and I kind of I'm not saying pointing the blame, but I'm kind of just attributing that to uh, being raised military, right? Both my parents were in the military, and there's a certain way that I fold my clothes. There's a certain way that I store my shoes and all this sort of thing, right? So, and what here's what I'm getting at with OCD. Okay, a- at its surface, to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but at its surface, to me, it seems like it's almost like a double-edged sword in some ways. In one light, it seems to be an asset in some circumstances, while in another light, it's a detriment to others. Is that accurate?
Oh, that's 100% accurate.
Okay.
Just kind of with OCD, it's such a spectrum. And I think we kind of have a defined idea of what OCD really is, but it can be very broad.
Hmm.
And I think what really happens is it's one thing to be organized and to want things to happen, to be disciplined, but it's another thing when it becomes an obsession, when
Right.
it's really all you can think about and it starts interfering with your daily life. And
Hmm.
for me, one thing that I've been working on with my therapist is realizing that I'll always have OCD. This will be something I have to learn to live with,
I
but I
see.
can take it and use it as an asset rather than
Yes.
using it for my detriment when it came to controlling my diet. Now,
Yes.
for example, I'm the person you want to take to the grocery store because I'll organize the list aisle by aisle. So, we're
Yes.
quick in and we're quick out. So it's just those little things like that that are actually assets. So it's nice because it's a part of me that I don't have to suppress. It's a part of me I can learn to accept and
Hmm.
embrace and actually use to my benefit.
Very nice, very nice, and thank you for explaining that. I really appreciate it because one thing you mentioned was something else that I was going to ask, which is I was trying to bridge the gap right between um, your OCD and your eating disorder and the impact that OCD had on your eating disorder, and you gave a great example of that in your explanation. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Jason. All right. So here's a question. I was just curious about this. In your life, do you consider, or did you consider, or I guess do current because you'll always have OCD, you said, but do you consider anxiety and OCD as synonymous in your life, or did, does one manifest the other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say they probably feed off of each other,
Okay.
because if something's out of my control, that's when the anxiety kicks in.
Hmm.
So I can definitely see that relationship between the two of them. Usually,
Gotcha.
I'm a pretty calm person, but
Hmm.
it's those things that are outside of my control. They just give me so much panic, so much fear.
I
Uh,
see.
so, of course, being OCD, I want to try to control as much as I can. So when
Yes.
there are the things like getting on an airplane, I always joke that I'm terrified of flying,
Hmm.
but if I could sit in the cockpit, I'd be
Hmm.
fine because then I could at least see what was going on. I wouldn't know how to fly
Ah,
that plane if something happened,
that
but
makes sense.
I could be in there, maybe control it somehow.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that where the anxiety and the OCD definitely overlap.
Hey, just as a sidebar question, now that you've used the airplane analogy, I'm sorry, I got to ask, what about trains? Have you ever been on a train?
I have, and those also give me some anxiety because I'm not
Okay.
up there with the engineer. Yeah, I
Right.
want to.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to be. Yeah, I got really lucky because one of my friends is a private uh, pilot,
Yeah.
so I'll get to go up in his small plane with him, and I love
Hmm.
that. I can do that because I'm right there by all the instruments. But
Sure. Sure.
yeah, I don't, put me on a bus.
Yeah.
I can at least see the driver, so I'm good.
Right.
But yeah,
Uh,
if I can't see what's going on in the main
uh-huh.
control center, I'm not happy.
No, I hear you 100%, man. Wow, Jason, man, your journey has been a series of triumphs, setbacks, and resets, and more, at least just from the tip of the iceberg that we talked about. And then you've heard of the term, right? That there's a term that people say that it just got real, you know, and in a lot of cases when they say that, I guess there's some circumstance or some pivotal event, that takes place that really sparks the light bulb in the head of that person, where they're like, oh, you know what, this just got real. Okay, so I would love, if you can, to please share with the listeners that pivotal life defining event that sparked your road to transformation. Can you share that with the listeners?
Absolutely. So it all started with a hummus platter. It
Mhm.
might sound like the craziest thing, but my husband and I were on a trip last year, and
Uh-huh.
of course, with the pandemic, we had been looking forward to just an opportunity to get out of town for a couple of days.
Right.
And for me, going on vacation was always a very stressful time because I didn't know the restaurants, I didn't know what was on the menu at the restaurant, so I had to plan all of those things in advance, and it
Hmm.
took me out of my daily routine, out of my
Hmm.
comfort zone.
Hmm.
So we were up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, just for a couple days to get away over the 4th of July.
Right.
And one night we went out to dinner. And after perusing the menu before we even got there, I probably spent a good 2 hours searching for a restaurant that night. I finally settled on this place, and this was
Hmm.
going to be my safe place for the night. Uh,
Hmm.
I asked to order the hummus platter and substitute the pita bread for fresh vegetables because I was
Yes.
terrified of carbs at that point,
Hmm.
and the waiter couldn't do it. They didn't have fresh veggies there to add to the platter.
Oh,
And in
wow.
that moment, I freaked out. I just had
Hmm.
a meltdown. I
Hmm.
started crying. I was just done with everything. I told my
Hmm.
husband I just wanted to go home. The trip was
Hmm.
over. I wasn't going to eat anything that night.
Hmm.
And he looked over at me and immediately acknowledged the pain that he saw in my eyes from losing my parents at a young age, from
Yeah.
having a fallout with my family, from
Hmm.
all the hardships that I had overcome in my days. And
Hmm.
now this most recent kind of really exacerbated eating disorder, because at that point it was at its height.
Right.
And he just acknowledged the pain.
Hmm.
And somewhere in that moment, it got real
Hmm.
because it sunk in. It hit me that there was a lot going on and it was greater than me. It was
Yes.
something I needed help for. And I will always remember that because it happened on the 4th of July. So
Hmm.
that was truly my Independence Day, because that was the day that
Wow.
I was able to break free from the chains that I had been tied to for so long.
Amazing. Amazing. My gosh, sometimes just the most ordinary of events or tasks, can be such a revealing, um, a revealing message to ourselves about ourselves, right?
Mhm.
And having those who are close to us in our lives to be there and to, you know, not not just know what we're going through, but feel what we're going through. That can make all the difference in the world. It really can. So let me ask you this. There's a pattern, at least I think, or I feel there's a pattern in a lot of our lives where some things like the ups and downs of your weight or the ups and downs of finances are there's a connection or an association between those ups and downs, and our mindset or our mental state, our moods, right? It affects us psychologically. Like there's this notion, I guess, when someone loses a lot of weight or they're very fit, they feel good about themselves, right? So psychologically, there's a positive impact. And then someone who starts gaining weight, they start to feel, inadequate. They start to feel out of shape, maybe not even attractive. I mean, it depends. Everyone's different, right? So here's the thing. I mean, I really believe that it is healthy to, if you're more fit or if you become more financially independent, that should be uplifting, right? So I agree with that association, but how can we keep that association, right? And break or disconnect the association of gaining weight or losing your money, which traditionally brings on depression, doubt, and inadequacy.
I think one of the biggest things that we have to do is, especially when it comes to weight, is to maybe not recognize that that person has lost a lot of weight or celebrate the fact that they've just lost a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Just celebrate their overall accomplishment and their goal for the fact that they achieved their goal,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether that is making a lot of money or losing weight. I think we too often place so much emphasis on numbers in our society that
Right.
sometimes we forget the motivations behind things. And for me personally, when I would lose a lot of weight and people would praise me about it, it made me feel good. But it also justified my behavior. So
Mm.
what I was doing to myself was abusing myself at the time. I was restricting calories and in the middle of an eating disorder, but I had people praising me for it because they were only seeing the outside.
I
So
see.
for me, I think it would have been key for them to maybe just acknowledge the fact that I had achieved a goal rather than, oh, congratulations, you lost 25 pounds.
Yes.
Because it just, in my mind, in my disordered mind,
Mm-hmm.
I perceived it as justification to continue what I was doing.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, I can definitely relate to that, and I truly get what you're saying, Jason. Thank you for sharing that. So, uh, can you share with us at what point in your journey um, did you feel called to launch your website and to share your story? At what point in your journey? Because with a lot of people, they have this recovery that they're doing, right? And the recovery is a process, and at some point in that process, they're not done with it, but they feel that they're in a place where it's on their hearts to start reaching out and helping others. When did that happen for you?
Yeah, so for me, it was a couple months into recovery. I
Hmm.
was struggling with the thought of telling my friends, of opening up to my friends and really being vulnerable and
Right.
letting people know what I had been battling for so long. I worried that they would see me as a fraud or a liar. And I talked to my therapist about it, and he
Mhm.
gave me an assignment to write my story.
Okay.
Writing has always been something I've been passionate about.
Hmm.
And he was like, why don't you just write what you would like to say to them? Maybe just sum up your entire journey. So
Hmm.
I wrote this, but it was about 4 pages long, wrote it out, and I read it back to myself.
Hmm.
And it's in that very moment that I gained self compassion for myself because I saw my journey from a third party point of view. And
Oh,
I realized the power of storytelling at that
okay.
time.
Yeah.
And I thought, there aren't many voices out there like mine. When
Mhm.
people will ask me who is a role model I've looked up to as a male with an eating disorder, I
Mhm.
don't have any because
Yeah.
there's not very many people that are talking about it.
Right. Right.
And I realized that if my story impacted me so much, the
Hmm.
difference it could make in other people's lives as well. And I just kind of wanted to get my voice out there to tear down the stigmas and the stereotypes that
Yes.
eating disorders don't fit a certain mold and mental illness does not just hit one demographic, that
Right.
it's wide reaching. It doesn't matter who we are, we can be impacted by these things. And it was just the power of storytelling that just
Hmm.
compelled me to take my story public and to hopefully help others.
I tell you, storytelling can inspire and change lives without a doubt. Yeah, sure can. So, Jason, you have a journal, and on the inside cover, you have written, and I quote, "Trust the process, embrace the process, and enjoy the process." Can you please break that down for the listeners?
My favorite thing. I love even just hearing it back. It's just, it empowers me and inspires me so much. So at the start of recovery, like a lot of people out there, I made the first appointment with my therapist, and I'm like, this guy won't be able to help me at all.
Mhm.
Therapy is just one of those things that the celebrities go to so that they can complain about having too much money or something like that. So I
Mhm.
was really doubtful when I made that first appointment. And at it, he gave me breathing techniques to kind
Mhm.
of work on my OCD and to work on my anxiety. And I thought, there's no way in the world this is going to work.
Mhm.
And I told myself at the end of that session, I was like, Jason, just trust him once. He's doing what he thinks is best for you. So at that moment, I was like, I've got to trust the process. I've got to just completely blindly trust this guy, even if I don't completely agree with what he's saying. And
Right.
a week later, I had my check in with him, and things were completely different. Overnight, I could see I was starting to gain control over my OCD and my anxiety simply from those breathing techniques. And
Mhm.
it was in that moment that I realized this is a process.
Right.
I will always have eating disorder thoughts in my mind. I will always battle anxiety and OCD.
Yeah.
But throughout this process, I can gain the tools to be able to overcome those things. So once I started trusting it, I was finally able to embrace it and accept it as it was. And now I'm starting to learn to enjoy the process because it's so cool. I get to wake up every day and rediscover who I am. And
Mm.
I remember at the start of therapy, my therapist asked me what my strengths are, and
Mhm.
I didn't have an answer for him.
Mhm.
And now we could probably talk for 2 days about how many strengths I've been able to discover just in the last 9 months since I entered recovery. And I find that to be so much fun. So I am enjoying that part of the process. So it's a hike. I often compare it to a hiker or a climber going up a mountain. And we often just focus on the summit, but we overlook that climb that they actually take. And that's what my recovery mantra is: to trust the process, to embrace the process, and to enjoy the process. Not worry about what's at the top, take it one day at a time, and just fully live in the moment.
That really helps with perspective for someone who is really struggling. Those are very simple words with a huge meaning that you can impart and share. For someone who is in the early stages of going through a process such as yours.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
it's a terrifying process at first because I think we automatically, I'm a solution oriented person.
Right.
So for me, I just wanted to fix everything overnight. But
Hmm.
that's not the way it goes, and that's not the way I would want it to go. I want to take my time and do it right and really just embrace every single moment, the good and the bad, because that's the other thing with the process. There's good days and there's bad days.
Right.
Now I'm learning that those bad days are learning opportunities. Those are
Yes.
days where I grow a lot more than the good days.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
embrace those, I trust them,
Hmm.
and one of these days I'll even enjoy the bad days, I guess.
No, I guess you will, but another thing, I guess, and you brought up a great point, Jason. Your mantra, really helps and supports you during those times where there are setbacks, where there are bad days, right? Because I would think without the mantra, if you're in a different state of mind, a different mindset, and you have a bad day or you have a setback, then some people would just throw in the towel, pack it in, say, "Up, that's it. I can't do this. I'm back to my old ways," right?
Exactly.
But in trusting the process, part of the process is there will be some bad days. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There will be some bad days. And one thing that I've talked a lot about with my therapist lately is I had a lot of anxiety as things start to ease from the pandemic again,
Yeah.
because I entered recovery during the pandemic. So while we've
Mm,
been at home, we've not had the social interactions that we normally have.
right, right.
So one thing I was very worried about is once I go back into kind of whatever the new normal looks like, that I
Hmm.
could fall back into my old tendencies. And he told me, he was like, this is a process and you don't just fall back to square one.
Right.
He's like, you might have a bad day, you might have a setback, but there you can't take away the last 9 months. You
Right.
can't take away what you've already accomplished, no matter what you do. And that's been
Gotcha.
so helpful in me for relieving some of my anxiety about the future, because it all goes back to what I can and can't control. And
Hmm.
I can't control the future, but I can control how far I've come, and I can control the moment I'm in right now. So even if it is a bad day, I just
Hmm.
have to embrace it.
Embrace it and go through it, right? Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the reality of it, right? There will be some bad days, but of course, we stay the course and we consider that there will be bad days, but that doesn't mean that we are moving in the wrong direction. I mean, this is just the nature of the beast. And so it's like, the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight direct line, right? So there's a saying that we have at the road to rediscovery. It's on the road to rediscovery there are no detours. And and you embody that, Jason, by acknowledging and being real with yourself in your recovery, that there will be bad days and you just have to persevere and go through it. So I appreciate you for sharing that insight with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been one for a road trip, so this is just the ultimate road trip right now.
Oh, it totally is, man. It totally is. And we appreciate you taking us on your road trip. All
Mhm.
right. And speaking of the road trip, what's down the road for Jason Wood in the next year or two?
Yeah, so I've got something very exciting coming up on the horizon. In August, I'll be self-publishing my first book, a memoir, just over my entire journey. Uh,
Mm,
it starts back as a child when, food was freedom for me. It didn't have any negative connotation,
right.
to losing my parents, to coming to terms with
Mhm,
my orthorexia and my eating disorder, and just what I've been able to learn in the last couple months in recovery.
mhm,
And as somebody who's always found value in writing and storytelling,
mhm.
this book was just so therapeutic for me to write. And I'm just so excited to get it out there and to just raise awareness about these mental illnesses and about eating disorders. So that will be coming out in August. So I'm looking forward to that. And in the
Wonderful.
meantime, I just continue to hope to grow the blog and to grow the community that I've been so fortunate to become a part of. I would never wish an eating disorder upon anybody, or OCD or anxiety upon anybody. But the people that I've been able to connect with since bringing my story out is just incredible. I wake up every single day looking forward to networking and connecting with more people who have overcome their own challenges in their lives, because we're all unique. Each battle is unique, but we all share that common. There's just something common that's greater than all of us. Just being fighters, just having to wake up every single day and fight to reclaim our lives back.
Yeah, no, that's true. I love it. I love it. Yeah, we all have that same common denominator, right? And I think it's an intangible, but it's something that we all feel because it's something that we all go through. We go through triumphs, we go through tragedies, and then we go through times of pain when we think everything is getting better and vice versa. So man, that's cool. And just waking up every day looking forward to making new connections and talking and engaging with people, man. I mean, that's a true testament to your spirit, and so I really appreciate that. So Jason, how can the listeners connect with you, learn more about you and your story and the awareness of men's eating disorder?
Yeah, so they can visit my blog. It's orthorexiabites.com. And
Okay.
on the blog, I've got a link to the book that will be coming out. I've got information on orthorexia itself, since that's a little bit of a lesser known eating disorder that people don't know about.
Mhm.
And I just kind of talk about men and mental health and eating disorders in specific. One thing I forgot to mention is I'm looking forward to a campaign coming up in June, since that is Health Month, where I'll be kind of just doing a online social media campaign, just showing that strong men talk. Because that's one thing that I've really learned, is that when you're
Yes.
vulnerable is when you're strongest. And
Yes.
we all have emotions, we all have insecurities, and it's okay to share them. Because as soon as you share them, they lose their power over you. So I definitely recommend visiting the website and checking out more information on that as well, because
Okay.
I think that's just going to be a really empowering campaign to help people, to help guys in particular uh, fight their battles that they need to fight.
No, that makes sense. Break those stigmas, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they can be huge, huge walls.
Yeah.
So, wow, Jason, man, I want to thank you so, so very much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate all that you're doing, and just so you know, you're an inspiration to all of us. So thank you so much. It's been my pleasure to be here tonight.
Oh no, you're too kind. Thank you, man. And I want to make sure all of you guys know that we will have direct links to Jason's website on the episode show notes. All right, so make sure you check the episode show notes for orthorexiabites.com, Jason Wood's website. All right, so Jason, we are now about to enter a segment I like to call Three for the Road. And in Three for the Road, that's where I ask three random yet thought provoking questions, encouraging my guests to answer in 5 words or less. So, what do you say? You think you're up for it?
I think I'm in. Let's do this.
All right, fantastic. And by the way, my questions are not cookie cutters. Okay, they are original questions customized for you based on your background and your profession. Okay. And it's just a fun way to kind of cap off the show. All right. So, three for the road. Here we go. Question number one. Oh, in fact, you know what? Yours is a little different. It's structured a little different. I don't know. I had a bit of an imagination epiphany as I was writing this. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, man.
All right.
I'm going to give you a scenario, okay, an event or scenario.
Hmm.
And based on that, give us your interpretation of the ideal location, the food, and the mood for each scenario.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Do I still have 5 words or less, or do I get any more?
I'll let it flow, man. You
All
go
right.
over five, keep going.
Sounds good.
I'll let it flow. Okay, here we go. Ready?
Yep.
Number one, you just received a promotion.
Ooh. Wow. We're going out for fajitas, and we're gonna sit outside and look at the mountains. And what was the third thing I had to do? I can't remember.
Mood.
Mood.
Yeah.
I'm gonna enjoy. I'm gonna be happy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Fantastic. You knocked that one out of the park. All right. Number two, scenario number two. A close friend has just lost their pet.
Mm, mm. We're gonna grab some ice cream.
Hmm.
We're gonna sit on a neighborhood bench.
Hmm.
We're just gonna talk about it,
Hmm.
and I'm just gonna be open. I am just gonna be receptive and listening to their what they need to talk about.
Very supportive.
Yep.
Awesome. Fantastic, man. All right. And question. Scenario number three to cap us off for Three for the Road. You just finished an exhilarating, I can't even talk. You just finished an exhilarating workout.
All right. Ooh, I got to go with my favorite here. So I'm just going to be sitting on the couch having a big bowl of cereal, because
Cereal.
cereal is my jam now. And
Is it really?
yeah, and I love being able to have it with real milk again. So that was one thing that was off limits for a long time. So
Yeah.
I'm going to cuddle up on the couch and have a big bowl of cereal.
All right. And you'll be happy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, that is fantastic. Well, Jason, congratulations, man. You just knocked Three for the Road out of the park. Very, very good, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your insights, and just connecting with the listeners, man. And please, let's stay in touch. I would love to hear maybe 6, 8 months later down the line, maybe coming back on the show, giving us an update on your memoirs.
Oh, I would love that. I'm already looking forward to it. So you just let me know when.
Oh, I certainly will, man. We'll stay connected for sure. Thanks again, Jason. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this show on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your shows. And more importantly, if you know someone or have a loved one in your life who seems to be at the end of their rope with no direction, nowhere to turn, and they feel or seem as if they've lost all hope, I truly ask that you please share this show with them. Please share the show with them. I would greatly appreciate it. And I appreciate it not for me or the show, but for them. Okay. Because there's two things that I want everyone to understand. When you're going through dark times struggling, number one, you're not alone. And number two, there is always hope. The Road to Rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.
The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.